Hello and welcome to the podcast. This is Ron's Amazing Stories. We have stories that should thrill you a little and chill you a little.
It's amazing.
What you'll hear are adventures sent in by you guys, classic stories from the pulp mags, and episodes from the golden age of radio. We have special segments like Ghost Stories with Sylvia.
That's amazing.
And These Are Your Stories. So settle in for the next hour and enjoy the show. One more thing. You just might want to prepare yourself to be taken away from today.
Another 5-minute mystery.
This 5-minute mystery is being brought to you by the wolf. Or maybe the dog.
Which is it?
Well, if I had to say, I would go with wolf. Or maybe a werewolf?
Are you trying to confuse me?
No, just, okay, how about the canine?
Ron, just stop this and play the mystery.
Will do.
In a small private lodge high on a mountaintop in the Lake Placid region, Alice Herrick toys nervously with a corsage of orchids pinned to her luxurious fur wrap, as her husband, his broad back against the cabin door, twirls a small revolver on his fingertips.
You're a fool, Charles. I don't know what you want of me. I'll do anything. Anything you say.
There's nothing I want of you now, Alice, but to have you dead.
It's money you want, isn't it, Charles? All right. You can have every cent I have.
Oh, no, Alice. This is it.
You haven't got the nerve. You haven't got the nerve to kill me. You'd never even...
You've underestimated me for the last time, Alice. And this time, it was fatal. I can't believe it.
Here, Mr. Herrick, you'd better sit down. Over here by the fire.
Thank you. I guess I'd better. Where was she, Sheriff, when you found her? Please, I want to know everything.
Well, she was sprawled in that chair over there by the desk. The gun had obviously fallen out of her hand onto the floor.
How long do you think she'd been dead, Sheriff?
The coroner said about 48 hours.
2 days. And all that time, Alice was lying here dead. I didn't even know.
Yes, the ironic part of it is we might not have even found her when we did. The skiers who reported it to me had passed your place earlier in the day and had seen your wife sitting there through the window and thought nothing of it. The gun was on the side away from the house. About dusk, they passed again, and when they saw she hadn't moved, they came up for a closer look.
They saw the gun then?
No, it wasn't until they noticed the wilted orchid on her dress and a few fallen petals beside her on the floor that they knew it was a woman and that she'd been dead for some time.
How ghastly.
The thing we've got to find out, Mr. Herrick, is why. Why should your wife decide to take her life?
I don't know. She often liked to come up here alone, and this time I thought it was no different.
You were never worried about your wife being up here alone?
Alice was a very independent woman, Sheriff. She wouldn't allow worrying over. Besides, we two were the only ones who had keys, and it was as safe as any place could be.
Then you'd say we could rule out the possibility of anyone's having gotten in and killed her.
Killed her? But Alice committed suicide. You said so yourself.
Well, we don't like to overlook anything.
But no one could have known she was up here. Besides, you said the place was locked when you found her. There was no robbery. What would be the motive?
Maybe that's the one thing you can tell us, Mr. Herrick. The motive, I mean.
I don't understand. What are you driving at?
Just this, Mr. Herrick. Your wife did not commit suicide. She was murdered, and you're under arrest for that same murder.
Why did the sheriff arrest Charles Herrick for murder? What was the clue? In a moment we'll hear, but first...
Well, that was violent.
Agreed. But why suspect Charles? I mean, I know he did it, but I didn't hear any evidence.
Nor did I. I guess the flower has something to do with it, but I'm at a loss.
Normal for you, I am afraid.
Probably. It's hard to follow these FMMs.
Then why play them?
Because I can?
As reasons go, that is not a good answer.
Okay. How about because I do?
And again, that does two things.
Being?
Not an answer, and you're an idiot.
And now, back to our story.
That was a nice, neat little job of stage setting you did, Mr. Herrick, to make your wife look like a suicide. Gun carelessly dropped under her lifeless hand, wilted petals fallen from her orchid corsage. But no one else could have gotten in because the door was locked and the only other key with you. A perfect suicide, except for one thing. You shouldn't have been so exacting as to have strewn fallen petals from your wife's flowers, Mr. Herrick. Or didn't you know orchids do not shed their petals?
Oh man, that was bad.
Yes, that was a pretty silly ending. The bloom phase of an orchid should last 6 to 8 weeks, but after that the petals will fall off.
Okay, but I don't think the body was there for 8 weeks.
No, but the orchid could have been that old.
Oh hey, that's a good point.
What's that you say?
Hello and welcome to the podcast. Today's theme is the canine, but really we have all kinds of strange dogs, wolves, and even werewolves. We will begin the show with a review of the audiobook Lycanthropy and Other Chronic Illnesses by Kristen O'Neal. Then I will tell Jeremy's story that takes place in the deserts of New Mexico. Our featured story comes from Canada and the Mounted Police, specifically the husky Yukon King. We will end the show with a brand new Johnny, Is It True? Werewolf Edition. But before we get to that, we have an email from Thomas Sibley. Hello, Ron. I love the podcast. I do have a question. I'm new to old-time radio. I really didn't know it even existed until your show. I've always thought radio was news, sports, and music. I'm beginning to see that it was so much more. What can you tell me about it? Maybe do a segment on the show to clue us all in. Tom. Well, Tom, I think that's a great idea, and I'll start working on that. Until then, let me give you a few facts. Old-time radio, or the golden age of radio, refers to a period starting in the 1920s and 30s, when radio and movies were the dominant entertainment. It lasted until early 1960s. That's when music took over and radio became what it is today. Most radio stations first began as a wing of a newspaper, department store, or other major business. The call signs for these stations often corresponded with that business. For example, Chicago's WGN, owned by the Tribune, stood for World's Greatest Newspaper. Soon after, people started reading stories and then acting them out. A lot of great actors got their start doing this. This is where the stories come from that you hear on the show. Old-time radio dramas exist today because hobbyists and radio personnel rescued episodes of these shows. If not for them, Ron's Amazing Stories would be a very different show. Well, Tom, that should get you started. I will work on that segment and let you know when it's going to air. Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook and a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/Ron's Amazing Stories. Audible has sponsored the show now since July of 2019. We have reviewed more than 140 audiobooks, and the list keeps growing. Did you know that Audible has over 200,000 books available? And a lot of those are included in the free catalog. Audible is amazing, and it is the perfect companion to Ron's Amazing Stories. If you like this podcast, you're going to love Audible. So what am I listening to? Lycanthropy and Other Chronic Illnesses by Kristen O'Neal. I wasn't sure about this one. It's kind of a teen wolf meets emergency contact in this sharply observed, hilarious, and heartwarming debut novel about friendship and the hairy side of chronic illness. Priya worked hard to pursue her pre-med dreams at Stanford, but a diagnosis of chronic Lyme disease during her sophomore year sends her back to her loving but overbearing family in New Jersey and leaves her wondering if she'll ever be able to return to the way things were. Thankfully, she has her online pen pal, Bridget, and the rest of the members of Ouch My Bones, a virtual support group that meets on Discord to crack jokes and vent about their own chronic illnesses. When Bridget suddenly goes offline, Priya does something out of character. She steals the family car and drives to Pennsylvania to check on Bridget. Priya isn't sure what to expect, but it isn't the horrifying creature that's shut in the basement. When Bridget is nowhere to be found, Priya begins to puzzle together an impossible but obvious truth. The creature might be a werewolf, and the werewolf might be Bridget. As Bridget's unique condition worsens, their friendship will be deepened and challenged in unexpected ways, forcing them to reckon with their own ideas of what it means to be normal. Here's a clip from the book.
Ticks don't actually have teeth. I looked it up afterward, scrolling through photos with that same kind of sick fascination of watching someone pop a pimple. They've got this horrible, ridged capitulum that opens up into 3 parts, like the monster from Stranger Things, sinks into your skin and holds on just long enough to derail the course of your entire life. I don't know what time it is when I wake up. This time last year, I would have known the second I heard my alarm trilling. 7:30 a.m. on a Monday, enough time to hit snooze once, slip out of bed, turn on the coffee pot my roommate and I weren't allowed to have in our dorm, and get ready to leave for bio at 8:40. Enough time to sit and drink it, knees to my chest, as she slept, scrolling through my email or my blog. I was a well-oiled machine. I was pre-med at Stanford, and I had made it out of New Jersey. I was ready for anything. It must have happened when I was home for the summer, trudging through the tall grass with my high school friends, cutting across a field to get to town. Or maybe it was down by the Amtrak tracks with the climbing plants, as JD roped me into acting for one of her film projects. I don't know. I'll never know. The only thing I know is that when I got back to California last fall, I got sick. Really sick. I don't set an alarm anymore. I know I've slept too long. My internal clock won't wake me when it's supposed to. It's sluggish now, constantly running low on battery. And so am I. I take a quick inventory, staring up at the same crack in my ceiling that I've stared up at since I was 5 years old. My head is stuffed with cotton. I feel heavy, like something is pinning me to the mattress, and my joints hurt, a throbbing pain that will only get worse as I move. It feels like a handful of fevers scattered around my body, a dozen hungry black hole stomachs, my left knuckles, my ankle, my knee, my hips, my wrist. Sometimes it feels like coals being stoked hotter and hotter until I can't move. Sometimes it feels like a fist clenched tight, tight, tight until I think that my bones are going to break.
While this book is about the relationship between 2 women that have very different problems, the resolutions they come up with make sense in the end. I love this story, and I was probably not the intended target audience, but I tend to give things a try before giving up. The humor in this story is so very well done. The drama is intense, and who doesn't love a good werewolf tale? All wins, in my book. Now, if that appeals to you, head to audibletrial.com/Ron's Amazing Stories, and you can have Lycanthropy and Other Chronic Illnesses for free. Here is what Audible has set up for us. They are offering a free audiobook in 30 days to give you the opportunity to check out the service. This also grants you access to the included catalog, which is updated constantly with new titles. So, to download your free audiobook today, go to audibletrial.com/Ron's Amazing Stories. Thank you, Audible. And now, it's time for your stories.
These are your stories. Special edition.
Welcome to These Are Your Stories. You might be asking, how is this different from the other segment? The answer is simple. These are special. But what makes them that way? Again, the answer is simple. They deserve special treatment. It may be the content of the story or how the story was obtained. Or it could be that the storyteller himself or herself is actually here in person. No matter the how, why, or where, what you'll hear in this segment is gonna be special. Our story this week comes from Jeremy Grant. And no, not the power forward for the Portland Trail Blazers. At least I'm pretty sure he isn't. Jeremy writes to us from Las Cruces, which is a city in New Mexico. We've had some amazing stories from down there, but I have to tell you, we've not had anything like this. But I'll let you decide. Here is Jeremy's story that he has titled, The Howl in the Desert. Hello, Ron. First, I have to tell you I'm part of the Acoma Pueblo tribe. According to the 2010 census, 4,989 people are identified as Acoma. We've been in the area for over 2,000 years, making us one of the oldest continuously inhabited communities in the United States, along with the Taos and Hopi Pueblos. I've heard stories from my grandfather about skinwalkers my entire life. The Navajo legend of skinwalkers has received a lot of attention thanks to the Skinwalker Ranch. The exact origins of the skinwalker mythos remains ambiguous, although they are generally said to have been evil witches with the ability to change their shape or take possession of animals and people. My grandfather tells another story. He says they are a race of terrifying cannibal dwarves of formidable strength. They are child-size, look like two-legged wolves, and are insatiably aggressive. According to him, they believe that they can only reach the afterlife by being killed in battle. He told me many stories about his ancestors facing off against them, one of which his great-grandfather had his arm bitten off, which, I have to tell you, as a kid, gave me nightmares. With that as a backdrop, here is my story. I was 15 years old, living with my family at Acoma Pueblo, approximately 60 miles west of Albuquerque. It was common for my father and I to go camping in the desert, which was a time of connection and, well, fun. We sat under the stars and told stories. There's nothing like the desert at night, and if you've never done it, I guarantee a life-altering experience. It was after midnight, and we were settling into our sleeping bags for the night. We had had a meal of fresh rabbit and cactus. Cactus tastes a lot like okra when properly skinned and cooked. I was thinking about the day when I heard something moving over near our campfire. I sat up and took a look. What I saw sent chills through my body. Going through the supplies was a 4-foot creature with a dog-like head and black, ugly teeth. It didn't seem to care that I was looking at it. I shook my dad, but he just grunted. I got up my courage and said, "What are you?" With that, the creature howled like nothing I'd ever heard before, stood straight up on hind legs, and charged me. I was wrapped up in my bag, so all I could think to do was roll away. It landed right where I had been, let out a second howl and came at me again. Then a gunshot rang out into the night. My father had woken up and fired his pistol into the air. The creature dropped down on all fours and ran off into the night. We didn't sleep any after that. My dad told me that he had seen that creature before. He called it a skinwalker. But I have to tell you, it looked and sounded more like the story of my great-great-grandfather's encounter. Now I understood how a creature could have ripped off his arm. Jeremy Grant, La Cruces, New Mexico. Wow, Jeremy, that is an amazing story, and it sent chills through me as I read it. Skinwalkers are one of the more convoluted cryptids out there, which leads me to believe that they just might be more than one type of beast. According to some traditions, skinwalkers were once healers and medicine men who were corrupted by their own power and turned to evil. Based on that, perhaps each individual has his own personal experience, or hell. Who can say? I do know that I want to thank you for sharing your story. That's it for this time. If you have a story that you want to share, like Jeremy did, head to the main website at ronsamazingstories.com. Click on the story submission banner, leave your story, give it a title, and please tell me where you're from. I'll read it if I can. Our featured story for this week is all about a dog, kin to the wolf. It comes from the classic OTR series, Challenge of the Yukon. It was a long-running radio series that began on Detroit station WXYZ, along with The Lone Ranger and The Green Hornet. The series was first heard on February 3rd, 1938. Sergeant William Preston of the Northwest Mounted Police and his sled dog, Yukon King, fought evildoers in the northern wilderness during the gold rush of the 1890s. These stories are so very well told, and the quality of the sound is nothing short of phenomenal. Our tale today is titled The Pat Rack Nest, and just might be the most complete crime story I've heard on old-time radio ever. It first aired on May 13th, 1952. That's almost exactly 71 years ago.
The Mutual Broadcasting System presents Sergeant Preston of the Yukon. It's Yukon King, swiftest and strongest lead dog of the Northwest, blazing the trail for Sergeant Preston of the Northwest Mounted Police in his relentless pursuit of lawbreakers. On King! On, you huskies! Gold discovered in the Yukon. A stampede to the Klondike in the wild race for riches. Back to the days of the gold rush. With Sergeant Preston and his wonder dog, Yukon King, as they meet the challenge of the Yukon. Here's a mutual note for you. When you hear the sound of an eerie laugh, a pistol shot, or the hard pounding of horses' hooves echoing through the air, then you know that it's Sunday afternoon on Mutual, and time for programs that are everyone's favorites for listening entertainment. The shadow laughs, and evildoers everywhere tremble in fear of his invisible presence. True detective mysteries dramatize actual cases of criminal careers brought to an end by the untiring efforts of law enforcement agencies. Stories of outdoor excitement are brought to you on Bobby Benson, with the cowboy kid and his B-Bar-B riders galloping to adventure in the Big Bend country of Texas. And the clever sleuth Nick Carter proves his title of master detective is a deserved one as he unravels a tangled web of deception with polished skill. Remember, Mutual is first for listening on the first day of the week. Listen for the sounds of Sunday and enjoy the Shadow True Detective Mysteries and Nick Carter every Sunday over most of these stations. Scotty Digby had a small cabin just off the trail, about a mile from Selkirk. The old man had lived alone until he had taken in a young Frenchman named Andre Barnett. Andre and Scotty worked the old man's trap lines. As spring approached, the shed behind the cabin was filled with valuable pelts. But instead of being pleased with their good fortune, the skins were a source of trouble. Each time Andre tried to discuss the division of the profits from their work, Scotty said,
Listen, Andre, I took you in when you had no place to go. You've been living in my cabin and eating my food.
I have done more than my share of the work.
Oh, that's beside the point. This shack's mine, and so's the trap line.
Always you say the same thing. You tell me you took me in, gave me a place to live, and an opportunity to earn a little money.
That's what I did.
All right. But what would you have done had I not been here this winter? Who would have taken care of you when you were sick?
Well, I lived by myself a good many years. I can take care of myself.
And work the trap line while you were lying in your bunk, too weak to move. I did the work while you were unable to get out.
Huh. If it hadn't been for me feeding you, you wouldn't have been able to do any work. You'd have starved to death if I hadn't taken you in. I'm willing to admit you worked hard and you helped me out plenty.
Yeah.
That's why I'm giving you a third of what I get when I sell the furs.
Well, I'll not agree to that arrangement.
Whether you agree or not makes no difference to me, Andre. I don't want to talk about it anymore.
But
You heard what I said. That's my last word.
Scotty refused to discuss the matter further. Though Andre tried to keep his resentment to himself, the injustice of the situation preyed on his mind. Several weeks later, Sergeant Preston, accompanied by the great dog Yukon King, was riding toward Selkirk on a routine inspection trip. He drew rein at Scotty's cabin.
Whoa, Blackie. Whoa, boy.
Come along, King.
Just a moment. Sergeant Preston and King, it is good to see you. Come in.
Hello, Andre. Thought I'd stop by and see how you and old Scotty are getting along.
Oh, it is not a good partnership, Sergeant.
Huh?
Soon I shall go elsewhere and set out a trap line of my own.
Well, what's the trouble?
Sit down, Sergeant, and I shall tell you.
All right.
Now, we have had a good season. The shed behind our cabin is filled with fine skins.
Glad to hear it.
But I am not pleased. Scotty is determined and grumpy. He claims he took me in and gave me my start. Now, I have worked very hard all season, yet Scotty insists he will take 2/3 of what we are paid for the skins. I shall not agree to such an arrangement.
Well, of course he does own the trap line and the cabin.
Yeah, that is true. But he was sick most of the winter. I did most of the work. He is going to town tomorrow to sell the furs. He does not want me to go with him, so I shall not even be sure of what he gets for them.
I know you're excitable, Andre. Scotty hasn't been well. Perhaps if you talk to him calmly and point out the facts, he'll agree to make more suitable division of the money.
Well, I shall talk to him again when he comes in from the trap line. But of one thing I am sure, Sergeant. I shall get my proper share of the cash. Then I shall break with Scotty for good.
Well, I'm sorry things haven't worked out. King, what's the matter, boy? What's in this corner? Oh, a rat hole.
What's that? King must have got a glimpse of a certain thief we have around here.
Thief?
Oui. It is a pack rat, Sergeant.
Oh.
For some time, small objects disappeared from the cabin. One evening, I saw the pack rat make off with a button. And sometime later, I found its nest under the porch. Come, I'll show you.
Keep away, King.
Look there. Just behind that support.
Oh, yes, I see it. A couple of things in the nest right now.
A small spoon and another metal button. Oh, he is a slick one, that pack rat.
He must be under the cabin from the way King's acting. Well, here's your spoon and button, Andre.
Merci.
I'll go on to town now. I want to get to the constable's office before dark.
All right, Sergeant.
I hope you and Scotty got matters straightened out. Come on, King.
That evening, 3 travelers stopped in front of Andre's cabin. As the three men approached the front door, they heard loud talking coming from within.
I have tried to talk to you calmly, sir, but you will not be reasonable. I warn you, when you bring back the money tomorrow that you get for the furs, and it will be plenty, I shall not take less than half.
We'll discuss that when I get back tomorrow, Andre. There's no more to be said right now.
We have come upon an argument.
Yeah, but it seems to be over. Let's knock.
See who that is.
Good evening.
What is it you want?
We are heading for Selkirk and stopped to ask how much further we have to go. Also, if possible, we would like some water.
Of course. Come in.
Oh, thank you. I am Karl Arnim. These are two men I met on the way here. Ben Harwood and Art Topton.
I am Andre Barnett. This is my partner, Scotty Digby.
Hello.
How do you do?
Scotty.
Have you come far?
We've come down from Dawson.
Yeah, that's right. Now that it's getting dark, we wanted to find out how much further we have to go.
Selkirk is only a mile from here. I'll get some water for you. Or perhaps you'd all like coffee.
No, thank you. We'll just take the water and then we'll go on and get settled for the night.
The following morning, Karl Arnim entered the trading post. The usual group of loungers was sitting around discussing the news of the day. Old Scotty Digby was at the counter receiving payment for the load of furs he had brought in to sell.
Well, there you are, Scotty. $1,200 in cash. Well, thank you, Mike. I have a little business uptown, and I'll come back to get the supplies I ordered. Good morning to you.
See you later, Scotty. There's something for you, mister?
I don't suppose you have shells for a rifle of this make,
That's a new one on me, mister. What make is it?
It's a German Mauser rifle. I bought shells for it in Seattle, but I'm getting low.
Well, to my way of thinking, you aren't going to find any in this territory. I'd say that's the only rifle of its type around here.
Perhaps you could order some for me from Seattle?
Well, I'll try. But I don't know how long it'd take for him to get here. Maybe months.
Well, never mind. I may be going to the States soon. I'll wait until I get there. Thanks, just the same.
Don't mention it. Well, hello, Andre. You looking for Scotty?
Not exactly. Did you buy our furs?
Yep. Gave Scotty $1,200 for them.
Merci. That is what I wanted to know.
Well, he'll be back soon to pick up the supplies if you want to wait.
No, I'll not wait. And there is no need to mention I came in. I don't want him to think I was checking on him. I may run into him uptown. See you later, Mike. So long.
So long, Andre. Now, about that foreign-made rifle, mister. If you want to trade it for a new Winchester...
No, I'll keep it, thank you.
Well, come in again.
Yes, of course. Good morning.
When Andre had entered the store, Karl had stepped back so that the Frenchman hadn't noticed or recognized him. Karl left the store and stood watching as Andre reined to a stop up the street in front of the cafe.
Uh-huh. He is the one who was arguing with a man called Scotty at the cabin last night. If I ride out to their cabin and wait, I can take the cash when they arrive there. Easy now. Get up, come on!
Karl rode to the cabin, and leaving his horse behind the building so that anyone riding up trail wouldn't see it, he walked to the front door, and finding it unlocked, entered.
Yeah. Now, I'll wait until I see them through the window.
Karl waited patiently with his rifle held across his knees. Finally, he saw old Scotty coming along the trail alone.
Aha.
He got up and partly opened the window, which gave a view of the trail. Then, deciding he could shoot the old man without being suspected, he knelt and rested the Mauser rifle on the windowsill.
He'll soon be close enough so that one shot will do the trick. Yes, it's time right now. One shot did it. Now I'll pick up the empty shell and get the cash. The empty shell. Must have fallen through that wide crack in the flooring. Well, no matter. Would never be found there. I'll get the cash.
Quickly, Karl ran to where Scotty had fallen. He found the cash, and then ran back. Mounting his horse, rode up the trail in the direction away from town.
Get up! Come on! Get up!
Andre Barnett had watched Scotty leave town. Then, leaving the cafe, where he had been sitting near a window, he mounted and rode slowly down to the riverfront.
Oh there.
He walked slowly along the docks, then sat down on a packing case and stared at the water. Andre knew his shortcomings. He didn't want to face his partner just yet, because he was afraid that, bitter as he was, his temper might give way and cause trouble. He sat for some time thinking. At first, he decided not to go back to the cabin at all, to forget his share of the money. Then, realizing he'd need cash to get a fresh start, he reversed his decision. He'd go out, take what Scotty gave him, and leave for good. He walked back, mounted his horse, and rode back to the cafe to have coffee before going out to the cabin. As he passed the constable's office, Sergeant Preston hailed him.
Andre Barnett.
Oh there. Oh. Hello, Sergeant.
I was about to go looking for you, Andre.
Looking for me? Why?
Because of Scotty?
I don't understand.
Are you sure you don't know that Scotty was shot and robbed on the trail near your cabin?
Sacre bleu. I did not know. Who could have done such a thing?
That's what I'm going to find out, Andre. You'll have to come inside for questioning. Because of a few things we've learned, Andre, we have reason to suspect that you shot Scotty.
After being told of Scotty's murder, Andre was taken into the constable's office by Sergeant Preston for questioning. As Andre entered, he saw two of the three men who had stopped at his cabin the night before. One of them spoke.
That's the fellow, Sergeant. Just before we knocked at the door last night at his cabin, we heard him warning the old man that he wasn't going to take less than half of the money Scotty had get for the fur.
Yeah, that's right. All three of us heard him.
Where is this third man you speak of?
He went up to Beaver Creek this morning to see about buying a claim. He ought to be back soon.
Beaver Creek's about 3 miles beyond Scotty's cabin.
That's right. But Carl left some time before Scotty did. We saw Scotty heading from town. We were in the cafe. We saw this fellow there, too. He left right after Scotty did.
But I didn't go out the trail.
Sit down, Andre.
I didn't shoot Scotty. I didn't even know about it until you told me.
We'll talk about that in a minute. No use in you two men staying here any longer. Stay around town in case we want to ask any more questions, though.
Sure thing, Sergeant. Let's go, Art.
All right.
Now, let me give you the facts, Andre. 2 hours or so ago, Scotty left town to go to the cabin. He carried $1,200 according to the storekeeper, and you knew about it.
Of course I knew. But I didn't follow him. I never left town.
What do you think of it, Constable?
Andre, if you never left town, how come you didn't hear about Scotty's death? The men who found him on the trail and brought his body in told the story all over town as soon as they left here.
That's the point, Andre. Where were you?
Well, Sergeant, I saw
Briefly,
Scotty...
Andre told of trying to think things over down by the river. Then he turned to Preston, saying...
I don't even have a gun, Sergeant.
I've seen you carrying a gun, Andre.
Well, sometimes I carried Scotty.
Scotty's the only one who could verify that, and he's dead. You could have thrown the gun away after the shooting.
I didn't do it. I didn't. Believe me, Sergeant. You must believe me.
I'd like to believe you, Andre. I intend to get proof against the killer, and I sincerely hope it will not involve you.
Maybe King could pick up the scent of the killer, Sergeant.
King would have nothing to go on, Constable. Andre's scent would be all over the place, besides the 3 men who stopped at the cabin and those who found Scotty.
And so, you're going to accuse me of murder?
Not until we have proof, Andre. But in the face of the threat you made, and until we can check on your movements during the past 2 hours, we'll hold you on suspicion.
But I didn't do it. I swear it.
I'll do everything possible to prove you didn't, Andre, and to find out who did. We'll keep you in custody. The constable and I will check the alibis of the 2 men who gave us the information about you.
Sergeant Preston and the constable made inquiries around town, then compared notes at the constable's office.
I asked everyone I met along the docks about Andre, Sergeant, but no one remembers having seen him down that way.
I see. I checked the cafe, found that the 2 men who gave us the information about Andre's threat were there during those 2 hours, as they said.
It looks bad for him, Sergeant.
I can't accuse him of murder without proof, Constable.
Oh, what do we do next?
First, we'll go to the trading post and ask Mike a few more questions. and we'll go out to the scene of the crime and look around. Come along, King.
A short time later, the two Mounties entered the trading post.
Well, Sergeant, I hear you picked up Andre Barnett. Does he admit he killed Scotty?
No. Tell me, Mike, how many were in here when you gave Scotty that money?
Well, now, let me see. I'd say about 6 or 7.
Huh? Could you tell me their names?
Well, offhand I couldn't. But I can tell you that all of them stayed on here almost up to the time we heard about Scotty.
I see. Well, in that case, their names don't matter.
The only one who was here and left was a stranger with a German rifle. Called it a Mauser. Come in to try to get shells for him.
Oh, that must have been the man named Carl the two other strangers mentioned. When did he leave?
Right after Scotty went out. But, of course, Scotty stayed in town a while. I saw that stranger heading for the North Trail.
That adds up, Sergeant. His friend said he was riding to Beaver Creek to see about buying a claim. He must have gone out that trail sometime before Scotty did.
Yes, I know.
He sure had a mighty fine rifle. Did you ever see one of those Mausers, Sergeant?
Yes, but not in this territory, Mike.
I told him it was probably the only one of its kind up here. And as soon as he runs out of what shells he has, he'll not be able to use it.
He still had some shells, then?
That's what he said. But he also said he was getting low on them.
We'll find out all we can about him when he comes back to town, but, meanwhile, Constable, we'll go on out to Scotty's cabin. Let's go.
Right.
The sergeant and the constable, accompanied by King, rode out to the scene of the crime.
Oh, Lucky. Oh, boy. Easy. Here's about where the body was found.
Yes. There are plenty of hoof marks and footprints around.
The bullet was lodged in Scotty's chest. So he must have been shot from up trail as he rode toward the killer.
This is flat land around here. I'd say the killer would be someone he knew for him to get so close and not suspect anything.
It occurred to me the killer could have hidden behind the cabin or inside it. Let's look around.
Right.
Come on, Bucky.
Come on, get it, boy. Come on.
Leading their horses, the two Mounties walked to the cabin.
Look. The window facing the trail's partly open. Both Scotty and Andre had gone to town. No one ever leaves a cabin for any length of time with the door or window open for fear of prowling animals.
That's true, Sergeant.
Huh. Look here, Constable.
Well, look at what?
See this mark in the dust on the windowsill?
Ah, yes. You think it might
I'd
be...
say it's the mark of a rifle where it rested on the sill. From here, it'd be easy to shoot a person who was riding up that trail.
Maybe you've hit it. We might find the rifle still in the cabin.
We'll search for it.
The sergeant and the constable made a thorough search of the cabin for a rifle, but without success. They went outside and searched the shed behind the cabin and looked in the few scrub bushes nearby for the murder weapon. Convinced the rifle was not in the vicinity, they started back up the porch when they heard hoofbeats coming down the trail.
Quiet, King.
Must be a stranger. I don't know him.
Headed away.
Ho there, ho! Well, I did not expect to see mounted police here.
You must be the man named Carl.
Yes, that's right. I am Carl Arnhem, at your service, Sergeant. But how did you know my name is Carl?
We've talked to your friends in town.
Of course. But what is this all about? What's happened?
We're investigating a murder, Mr. Arnhem.
A murder? Oh, that is bad, very bad indeed.
Yes, it is.
My friends and I stopped by here last night. The two men were arguing. We couldn't help hearing.
We've heard about that.
Well, I left town early today to go to Beaver Creek, so I missed the excitement.
Who did you see in Beaver Creek?
A man named Hank Aiken. He had a claim for sale.
Oh, I know Hank Aiken, Sergeant. That'll be easy to check.
Have you caught the murderer, Sergeant?
Not yet.
I don't think you have very far to look for him.
What do you mean?
The young Frenchman, of course, Sergeant. He must be the one who did the killing.
Now, why do you say that?
We heard him threaten the old man, Scotty, last night. It's only natural that since the old man has been murdered after that threat, that man, Andre, must have done it.
Now, hold on. Sergeant,
Just a minute, Constable. I'm sure you were about to say we questioned Andre and so far had no proof against him, weren't you?
Yes, sure.
You must have passed this cabin on your way this morning, Mr. Arnhem. I don't suppose you saw anyone lurking about.
No, I rode right by without paying any attention.
You didn't think of stopping again to see the two men you met last night?
Oh, no, I was in a hurry, so I didn't think of stopping.
I see.
Well, what's King after under the porch?
We'll go find out.
Say, look, I just saw a rat go under the cabin.
Yes, I saw it, too. It has a nest right down here by this support. That's a pack rat. We found several small objects in this nest yesterday when I stopped here. I found something.
What is it, Sergeant?
An empty rifle shell.
Strange. A shell should fall under there and into a rat's nest.
Yes, isn't it? By the way, that's an unusual rifle you have on your saddle, Mr. Arnhem. Foreign make, isn't it?
Yes, a Mauser, made in Germany.
Can I look at it?
Of course.
It's a fine rifle. I see there's a cartridge in it. It's an odd shell. In fact, it matches the empty shell I just found.
No, that can't be it. It cannot be the same. No shell from my rifle could have been in that rat's nest.
Perhaps you haven't heard of the habits of a pack rat. That particular rat often takes objects from inside a cabin and puts them in its nest. Just as it must have done with this empty shell which matches those you use in this Mauser rifle.
It is not possible.
It does, however. And you're the only one who uses this type of shell. You killed Scotty Digby.
Now, wait, don't move.
Put down that pistol on him.
I was too quick for you, Mounties. I admit nothing. But I shall not let you accuse me of murder on the strength of finding an empty shell.
You gave yourself away before we found that shell.
What do you mean?
If you had gone directly to Beaver Creek as you claim, you couldn't have heard of the murder. We didn't tell you who'd been murdered. Yet you said Andre must be the one who did the killing, that it was only natural he must have done it since he threatened the old man.
I noticed that slip, too, and almost mentioned it.
That odd shell is just more evidence against you. That's probably the only gun of its kind in the Yukon.
Huh? So, you have it all figured out, hmm? Well, who will figure things out when they find both of you dead?
Oh, we'll take you in for Scotty's murder on him.
No. I'm going to kill you both.
King had come out from under the porch and saw Carl holding a gun on the two Mounties. King, true to his training, knew enough not to approach a man holding a gun from in front. The intelligent dog slowly circled around until he was behind the killer. Then Preston called,
"Halt, King!"
I'll fix that, Doc.
As Carl turned, momentarily taking his attention from the Mounties.
Hold it!
No!
Preston swung the empty rifle he still held in his hands, catching Carl a glancing blow on the head and sending him sprawling.
Oh, the dog, he has my arm.
First I'll get that gun. I have it. Down, King. Watch him, boy. Now get up, you.
Sergeant, it's all a mistake.
Yes, and you made the mistake. Keep him covered, Constable. I'll search him.
Right.
Here's Scotty's wallet. His initials are on it. This money is the reason you murdered him.
This clears Andre.
Yes. Arnhem, we arrest you in the name of the Crown for the murder of Scotty Digby.
That empty shell. It's all because of that.
Perhaps it is. You might have talked your way out of the slip you made. But this odd shell clinched the case as far as I'm concerned. You weren't smart enough to pick it up.
But it fell between the boards and the floor. I thought it would never be found.
Our little friend the pack rat helped us out there by taking the shell to its nest. Constable, we'll take this killer to jail and free Andre Barnett. Then this case will be closed.
Here's a mutual note for you. Every weekday afternoon at 5 o'clock over Mutual, it's time for the Children's Hour, with programs for all lovers of daring adventure and thrilling exploits. On Mondays, there's Bobby Benson, the famous cowboy kid, who gallops to rangeland excitement with his B-Bar-B riders. Wednesday and Friday, the fearless newspaper publisher Britt Reed dons the secret disguise of the Green Hornet and roars into action to bring evildoers to justice. And every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 5:30, Wild Bill Hickok, the real-life marshal of the early West, outwits rustlers and renegades in stories of blazing action. Tuesdays and Thursdays bring Sergeant Preston of the Yukon at 5 o'clock with the stirring adventures of a Northwest Mountie as he faces incredible hardship and danger to get his man. And Sky King follows at 5:30. Tune to Mutual every weekday afternoon at 5 o'clock for programs that take you to a world of imagination all over most of these stations. This is J. Michael wishing you goodbye and good luck until Thursday. This is the Mutual Broadcasting System.
Great story. So many details, and finally, the evidence really made sense. In so many of these crime stories, we're left with so many holes that if it were real, the perp surely would have been acquitted. Challenge of the Yukon had quite the run. There were more than 1,000 episodes made. In fact, this was 1006. The series ran from 1938 until the final broadcast on June 9th, 1955. That same year the radio show ended, Sergeant Preston of the Yukon premiered as a television series. Richard Simmons starred as Sergeant Preston and was supported by Yukon King and Rex, played by real animals. How about that?
Johnny, is this true?
As you know by now, I like to surf the internet to find the strange and unusual. I do this in the name of the podcast, but the truth is, I would do it anyway, even if there was no podcast. What you're about to hear is...
Johnny, is this true?
I will tell you a story and then ask the question, did I make it up or is it true? Your job is to decide. Let's get started.
Johnny, is this true?
Do you think that werewolves are just the stuff of legends? You're probably correct. Yet there's always a chance that those thousands of eyewitness accounts may be true, in which case you want to be prepared for the worst-case scenario. Let's discuss the lore of men turned to wolves. I will give you a fact, or possibly folklore, and you'll have to decide. Fact number 1. So where did werewolves begin? Could he have been an offspring from Loki? And no, I'm not talking about the Marvel comic here. Yep, this one's true. Norse legends spoke of Fenrir, son of Loki, and a wolf-like being. Fenrir was both the father to the wolves and to the werewolves. The gods learned of prophecies that forecasted terrible things about Fenrir, so they tied him up. In retaliation, Fenrir ripped off the hand of the god Tyr. Not a great start for the werewolf, if you were to ask me. Fact number 2. Okay, that's great and all, but it's just mythology. There's no mention of the werewolf in historical text, right? That would be wrong. Werewolves appeared in ancient Greek texts. Herodotus referred to a group known as the Nuri, who lived in Scythia, which extended from East Europe into Asia. The Nuri were capable of changing from human to wolf and back again, very much like our skinwalker tales, so very common in Texas and New Mexico. Fact number 3. Staying with historical text, there was a werewolf attack in the 1700s in France. Over 100 people were killed by a pack of creatures known as the Beasts of Gévaudan. Now that can't be right, can it? It can. Back in the 1700s, southern France fell under siege by a werewolf epidemic. The French army was called in to fight this threat. although many suspected that the bloodlust was carried out by dog-wolf hybrids. So maybe not werewolves, but hey, it could be. Fact number 4. Okay, let's head back to mythology. How do you turn into a werewolf? I'm going to give you some ways. One of them is made up by me. The rest are straight out of folklore. Can you spot my fakery? Number 1. Be born as a seventh son of a seventh son. Number 2. Eat wolf meat. Number 3. Enter into a pact with the devil. Number 4. Dancing with wolves will do it. Number 5. Be murdered under a full moon. And number 6. Avoid practicing Catholic sacraments for 10 years. Okay, did you spot the fake one? If you said number 4, Dancing with Wolves, you spotted it. While it was an epic Kevin Costner film, it will not turn you into a wolf. Otherwise, the outcome of that movie could have had quite the turn. Fact number 5. Is there really any truth to being a werewolf? Well, I'm here to tell you that there is. But the question is, can I prove it? I can indeed. If you suspect yourself of being a werewolf, then you probably are. Werewolves remember their exploits even after returning into human form. The werewolf disease is known as lycanthropy and involves rapid hair growth, an insatiable hunger for raw meat, and of course, fully turning into a wolf. Side effects include rapid mood swings, insomnia, and violent behavior. Now hold on. This could just be hypertrichosis. Historically, people have feared this condition, which causes hair to sprout all over the sufferer's body and face. These people are often suspected of werewolfism. So, there is some truth to it, after all. Well, those are my facts about werewolves. If you have any ideas for this segment, just let me know, and I will try to make it happen. Every man has the right to his opinion, but no man has the right to be wrong in his facts. Thank you for listening to
Johnny, is this true?
That was episode number 593. Only 7 to go until 600. Thomas Sibley and Jeremy Grant contributed to it. My thanks to both of you for taking part in the show. You did good. If you want to follow the podcast or the blog, head to ronsamazingstories.com. There you will find any of the links I mentioned and how to contact us. Do you want to help the show? The best thing you can do is to tell your friends all about it, and please leave reviews or feedback wherever you listen. Clicking that follow or like button helps us grow. Thank you for listening, and I hope you come again to find out what are Ron's Amazing Stories.
All of the vintage audio used in the podcast is believed to be in the public domain. Ron's Amazing Stories does not own the rights to any of the old-time radio used here. If you hold the rights to any of the shows played, please contact us immediately at ronsamazingstories.com.